Okay, so let's pick up where we ended yesterday. On page 10 in our notes, we're going to do example 8 and example 9. So remember, when you have the ambiguous case, you don't know if it's no triangle, one triangle, or two triangles, which is why we call it ambiguous. So the first thing we're going to do is label our triangle with the given information. So I know, so I have my ABC triangle. Angle A is 70, little a is 20, and little b is 30. So here, this would be an angle side side, which is why it's ambiguous. So let's set it up so we can first find angle B. So in order to set up our proportion, we would start with our angle and side that we know, which is little a and big A. And then we would have the sine of 70 degrees over 20 is equal to the sine of angle B over 30. So when we cross multiply this direction and multiply this direction, we have 20 times the sine of angle B equals 30 times the sine of 70. Divide both sides by 20. And that gives us the sine of angle B equals 30 sine 70 divided by 20. And the opposite of a sine is our inverse sine. So we're going to sub that in on both sides. So that leaves us with B, angle B, is the inverse sine of 30 sine 70 over 20. So take a moment and type that in your calculator. And we get a domain error. And remember, we said if there is an error, what that means is there is no triangle. So it is impossible for this third side, which we don't know, this side here is not going to be long enough to close and fill in with this information. So a triangle with a 70-degree angle and then a side of 30 and 20. This side here is not going to be long enough, so it's not going to fully close. So we don't know how long it is, but it's not going to be long enough, and that is why the answer is no triangle. So again, it's ambiguous because we don't know until we set it up. All right, let's look at example 9. So again, we start off by filling in all of our known information. We got A, B, and C. I know angle A is 10. I know little a is also 10, and little b is 5. So let's set up by finding angle B. So we have the sine of 10 divided by 10 equals the sine of B divided by 5. So go ahead and cross multiply, just like we did in our last example. I'm not going to show my work. Feel free to pause the video at this time so you can solve it and see if you end up with the same information that I have in my parentheses. And when we type that in our calculator, we should get that angle B is a really tiny triangle. It's 4.981 degrees. So that means that we do have at least one triangle. So that would be our angle B. I'm gonna go ahead and add that to my diagram. So now we can find angle C1. We're gonna do triangle sum. And we're subtracting the two angles that we know. And that should give you 165.019 degrees. And then the last thing we need to find for this triangle is side C. So little c. So for little c, I'm going to use the sine of big A over little a. And that's going to equal the sine of big C, which is angle C, 165.019 over little c. So we're going to cross multiply it. Go in this direction, go in this direction, and you should get 10 sine 165.019 equals C times the sine of 10. And when you divide both sides, little c is going to equal 10 times the sine of angle C, and that's divided by the sine of 10. Pause the video, type that in, see what you get. And you should get 14.886. So we have found that we have at least one triangle. Let me zoom out. The information for triangle 1, we found B1, we found C1, and we found little c1. So now let's see if it's possible to have a second triangle. And we're going to use what we know about if there are two triangles. If there are two triangles, B1 and B2 will be a linear pair, which means that they will equal 180. So B2 would be, well, let me go back. So angle A still doesn't change in our second triangle. So angle A would still be 10. B2 would equal 180 minus this B1, because B1 and B2 will be a linear pair if it is a second triangle. When we subtract that 4.981, we get that B2 would be 175.019. So looking at what we have, what we know, if there is a second triangle, I know that the first angle would be 10 and the second angle would be 175. But keeping in mind what we know about triangle sum, that is not possible. So there is no second triangle. Because angle A plus angle B2 is greater than 180 degrees. So in this example, there is only one triangle.